mentioned earlier, it's great to see so many of you. I'm Catherine from the Kent Medway Healthy Workplaces program, and I'm joined by Emma Norledge from Wave Community Bank, if you want to sort of give a wave. And we're delivering this financial well-being in the workplace seminar today. So we hope it will be a really useful resource for you, whether you're watching this recording or if you're attending live today. I've kind of gone briefly through the housekeeping, but just in case, we really want to encourage any interactivity. So if you do have any questions, please pop it in the chat. For the sake of the recording, we won't say your name out loud, but we'll make sure that we address any questions during it, and then if there's any other ones at the end as well. We do also have a satisfaction survey that I'm just going to pop in the chat just now. And so then that way you can kind of click on it, minimize it for now, and then as we go towards the end, if you can complete it, that will be really great as we sort of do this as a bit of a pilot series. So any future feedback would be really valuable. So in terms of today's session, we've got a lot happening. So we're going to do just a little bit of intros about myself and about Emma and the programs that we work for. We're going to look at the importance of financial well-being, but more importantly, looking at kind of best practice. So what is sort of recommended for organizations to consider, look at some kind of common troubleshooting, so how to do those things. And then we're going to hear from Emma at Wave Community Bank about some of those initiatives that she may be able to support your business with. And then we've got a ton of resources. So if you leave with anything after today's session, you will get the slide deck, which will contain all of these hyperlinked resources with you. So you can have a good sort of look through and see if there's anything that would be helpful to yourselves, and then just wrap up. So just a little bit about ourselves. So like I said, I'm Catherine. I'm joined by my colleagues, Michelle, Helen, and Grace on the call today. And we're part of the Kent and Medway Healthy Workplaces program. So if you're not already a part of our program and participating, it is a free funded program that supports businesses in Kent and Medway. So we're funded by KCC and Medway Council. We were previously endorsed by Public Health England, now called OID. And what we do in the nutshell is provide free support to organizations with their workplace health needs. So we do that through the lens of our award scheme, which has 4 levels to it. And we offer a range of support, again, all for free. So that can be things like access to free mental health training. We're working on a champion training, and we do, rather than this employer-focused webinar today, we also offer employee-focused webinars that you can direct your staff to when you join. In addition to that, we have a range of sort of resources from kind of a policy perspective, or leaflets or resources that we can provide to you, and a monthly newsletter that just does a good job at sort of collating any kind of upcoming well-being days or events to be aware of. And then what we also do is coordinate with local services to provide things like stop smoking support to staff, organize on-site workplace health checks, and organize bespoke activity challenges. So lots of things on offer there if you're not already a part of the program. And anything that you kind of do today that you take from today's session, we can typically accredit it to our program. And then I'm going to pass it over to Emma.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma Norledge. I'm the Deputy CEO of Wave Community Bank. We are a credit union. I know there's lots of people that haven't heard of credit unions. I hadn't before I got this job. We are a not-for-profit savings and loans cooperative, so people save money with us and we lend it out in the local community. We have a common bond of anyone living in Kent, Medway, East Sussex or Brighton and Hove, and at the moment we've got just over 9,000 members. We offer savings, loans, basic bank accounts, and I'm here today to talk about our Chorus Workplace Savings Scheme, which we run with employers, which range from big employers like large local authorities and NHS trusts down to small charities that may only have sort of 10 people working from them. So it's something that we offer everybody. And a major part of what we do is our social mission work. We do lots of work to help people get into the banking system and to use affordable financial services that are otherwise excluded. So the Workplace Savings Scheme is a big part of helping workers access affordable credit.
So I'm just going to sort of start with a bit of the sort of context and sort of landscape of our country's sort of financial well-being right now. Obviously, there's been a lot in the news lately about sort of the cost of living crisis. And if you are sort of starting to kind of put the business case together for your business on what more they could do around financial well-being, then this slide might be helpful to you. So just some fast facts. So 1 in 8, that's the number of workers in the UK living in poverty. And that was the statistic taken before the cost of living survey or cost of living crisis. So it is likely to go up. 40% is sort of slightly over the number of Brits who don't currently have savings to cover a month's worth of expenses if they were, to be off sick for a longer time. So quite a few of us. 15 million is sort of the projected amount of UK households that are going to be put into fuel poverty by January 2023. And then from more of a kind of workplace perspective, an employer perspective, 4.2 million is the number of working days lost annually in terms of absences due to a lack of financial well-being. And in a CIPD survey, about 1 in 4 reported that they felt money worries impacted their ability to perform their job. So it's quite a critical time, if you're not already doing things, to look at starting, or at least to look at enhancing what we can do to best support our staff. So in general, what I say to anyone kind of that joins our Healthy Workplaces program, when it comes to any sort of well-being topic, you can really decide the breadth or the depth of how deep you want to go into a particular well-being topic. So this kind of formula of these 4 stats kind of can really apply to any well-being topic that you may do today, whether that's physical activity, healthy eating, mental health. But we're going to look at in general how best we can apply that from a financial well-being perspective. So as always, it starts with assessing. We need to know what we're working with. Then we want to look to how we can build support, how we can take action, and then look at, as always, being able to embed it and evaluate it so that it's a sustained initiative and something that can sort of have a long-term impact for staff. So if we look at that first stage, when it comes to the assessing, as always, we need to sort of know what we've got and what we can work with. And so the first thing is to understand what are your staff's needs and their biggest financial challenges. I can come here today and, as I have, try to do some general statistics, but what are the statistics for your organization? What do they need? And you want to try to gather that information in a very comprehensive way. So that can be looking at, financial well-being questions in your sort of annual staff survey, for example, but it can look at other data. So looking at, absence rates, it can look at if you have an EAP provider, looking at utilization rates and what kind of common themes they focus on. It can be kind of a range of different sort of areas, or focus groups even, to try to get sort of feedback from possibly lower earner workers within your organization around what they need. So the kind of main questions to ask yourself is to think, what do my staff need to know about financial well-being? What help do the staff need? And then how best can that help be offered to them? So when we think about those questions, you may want to, as you gather your information, think about how you're going to sort of group and categorize that information, because often if you were to break down your information by kind of age bracket or by earning bracket, the data might look different. So what a sort of young first apprentice might need in terms of their financial well-being may be drastically different than someone that's planning for retirement. So again, think about your workforce characteristics and how you might group that information together, and then map that out. So think about what you're currently offering within your well-being, but also your kind of rewards and benefits offered. So again, the 2 sort of questions to sort of ask yourself today is to think about what are the current rewards and benefits available to staff, and then look at that, your information. Is there a difference between either age or earning bracket in terms of how those benefits are utilized? So I can give a personal example. When I worked back in the States, we gave a ton of financial well-being incentives to employees, but when we did a bit of an analysis, we found that the highest earners were actually the ones that were getting the most amount of financial incentives, and the lowest paid workers were barely getting any. So think about how you're mapping out that information, and then look at what are the methods, and also how frequently are you communicating those rewards and benefits information to your staff. Because again, oftentimes you're probably joining today because you actually already do some really fantastic work, but how is it being utilized? What's the uptake? And that could be possibly looking at your communication methods as well. So once you've done that assessment, then we want to think about how we could build support. So as always, you may have to sort of present a formal business case, or maybe just an informal conversation with senior leadership. But ideally, we want them to not only be bought in, but ideally have that commitment to either put it as part of their, portfolio responsibilities, or put it as part of their, kind of direct at that directorate level responsibility to have and to oversee, because we all have had very busy workloads, and it can often, these types of projects can be sort of the first thing that goes to the wayside when we've got a really full plate. So having it sort of as something that's a bit more solid can be really important. And then look at how you can use all that information from that assessment period to form and shape an action plan, or even a financial well-being strategy, to identify what are the key priorities that your organization is going to focus on. As always with behavior change, you want to make it smart. So think about having sort of specific, measurable, achievable, realistic time bounds for any kind of priorities that you set, and make sure that we've got the right people involved in this sort of project. So one, as always, you can decide how big or small this project can be for you, but thinking about who can help delegate, who can help divvy up this workload. Are there sort of any people in your organization responsible for HR, any well-being champions or union reps who can convey this information to key staff, or any sort of payroll or legal kind of people as well to think about these things. It's also really important, again, if you maybe have challenges in the past with uptake, having trust and two-way communication channels for staff to utilize, so that they feel like they can actually be a part of the solution and share their ideas, and that their ideas are listened to, and then ensuring that any sort of awareness and comms, again, are reaching people in effective and relevant ways, especially to your sort of lower paid workers, low earners, because they often have the most need, but the lowest uptake. Now, these next sort of 3 slides are by no means an exhaustive list. So, but hopefully it will kind of kickstart some ideas for you to consider when you start looking at this stage. You've looked at the data, you've looked at what your staff need, you've heard from them, and then you can maybe start to apply some of these sort of initiatives in place. As always, when we kind of think about any workplace well-being initiative or kind of topic, I like to break it down into this pyramid. So this culture and the policies in place at your organization, and any kind of low-level information that is readily accessible to your staff, are going to have the widest reach and sometimes the biggest influence. So think about with mental health, right? You may have not many people may take up the actual EAP service or counseling, but they may see a lot of information on just how they can look after their mental health before it gets to a point where they need intervention. So we want to have a wide breadth of sort of resources available. It starts with having, a fair and transparent wage, a wage that is competitive. If you're not in a sort of financial means within your organization to offer a kind of cost of living, bump or inflation matched sort of pay rise, then just making sure that we're considering to continue to be competitive and provide that livable wage. As again, with the cost of living crisis, you may find it becomes more of a possibility that you may have some staff looking for second jobs, and think about those legal implications of if there's any kind of restrictive covenants in their contract terms, or if they're sort of 0-hour contract workers, how that works for them. So I've got some resources at the end if that is relevant to you. From a policy perspective, definitely if you are starting from scratch, you want to look to develop a kind of reward strategy and a financial well-being policy or strategy. Or again, if you're joining today because you already have things in place, think about how you can review that. And again, ensuring that it, in the best intentions, sometimes it can do more harm than good, particularly for those that are on universal credit or tax credit. So again, just double check that if you're going to implement a new initiative, that the amount that you would offer offer isn't actually going to put them over that threshold, and then they're in a worse off situation. So think about those things from a cultural level as well. Think about reducing stigma. We know, can you imagine sort of talking about money in the workplace 10 years ago, right? We've come a long way, but there's still lots of work to go. So engaging in things like Talk Money Week, which is next month, November 7th through 11th, and that can be a really great way to sort of get the conversation going and making sure everyone feels comfortable to sort of have these conversations. And at the sort of general information level, being able to signpost staff to let them know that there is free information and debt advice from the Money and Pension Service, or you can signpost to your own organization's resources. So when it comes to these the initiatives level, however, this is kind of really where you can, it's a candy store. You can sort of choose however many things you want to do, but you always want to stem it back to that assessment stage. What do your staff want? What do your staff need that's going to help them the most? So again, just some ideas. If you feel like stigma and kind of the taboo around talking around financial well-being is still maybe quite rampant in your organization, you may want to look at training, and that can be for managers, HR, and well-being champions, so they feel a bit more confident to have general well-being conversations that may talk about money. And I've got a link to the Money and Pension Service training program at the end that you can access. And then some other initiatives that you may be doing or may look to do are salary sacrifice schemes. So some of them like cycle to work, travel loans if you have many people that commute, childcare if you have a lot of sort of middle-aged or those with young families, and flexibility in your pension contributions. So whether that's the ability to contribute more or to contribute less for a certain amount of time. Also, we're going to talk more, and Emma will talk more about sort of payroll deducted schemes like a saver scheme that's affiliated with a credit union or a loan scheme. But you can also look at sort of national discount programs for staff. So whether that's a national one, or like the civil service discount scheme that again is national, or you just go to local leisure centers and start to say, hey, I've got X amount of staff, would you consider offering us a corporate discount? And oftentimes they're more than willing to do that but by having sort of the numbers to back it up to say, this is how many staff I have, and this is how many in our survey said they're interested in this sort of benefit, then that can really help your case when going to leisure centers and whatnot. And then, as always, we want to try to increase that general level awareness around financial well-being. So again, based on the needs and characteristics of your staff, you may find more retirement planning webinars may be relevant, or starting with budgeting. So again, we've got an employee-focused webinar on Talk Money Week next month that you can direct your staff to if you're participating in our program. So that can be a good starting point, but there's lots of sort of information out there in our resource section. And then if you aren't, again, in a position, this is sort of the level in which you may find some of the financial kind of actions you want to do may start to have a cost. But if you're not in a position to look at those things, there are still lots of ways that we can financially look after our staff. So whether that's being able to offer them an extra annual leave day for their birthday, or to go holiday shopping, those can still be a really sort of valuable benefit to offer staff, or looking to subsidize meals if you have catering on site, or having sort of an equipment loan scheme or swap shop in the organization that people can access and loan from. As always, if you do have any questions as we go along, do feel free to just stop me and I'll try to answer them. But then at the last level kind of taking action, that's really where you do those interventions. So maybe you're focusing on a particular sort of subpopulation within your team, or you want to do a bit wider. But at any point, you can look, some ideas can be having a hardship fund that's sort of accessible from your organization. It could be utilizing financial well-being providers to offer information or webinars, or even offering financial coaching or access to a financial advisor that's regulated by the FCA. debt counseling, whether that's sort of standalone or that's through an EAP program, occupational health as well. So these are all kind of providers at this level of intervention, because at this point they might need more than that general low level information. They need, more specific targeted support for that individual, and especially if it's starting to impact their mental health, because we know financial distress is sort of the number one cause of stress in the UK. So that's lots of initiatives that you could look to implement. And again, it's going to be dependent on what the needs of your staff are, but hopefully that gives you a good sort of idea of what are some sort of things you could start to consider if not already in place. But as always, whatever you decide to go with, we want to think about embedding and evaluating it. So make sure that you embed your reward, well-being, and benefit comms in as many sort of channels as possible. Staff inductions are really great because you've got a captive audience and they're already comparing and contrasting what did their previous employer offer versus what am I getting now. So being able to get that captive audience, but think about that employee journey. So at staff induction, but then at what other frequent points can I reinforce that these things are available to them? Are there any organization-wide or directorate-wide kind of team outings that we can reinforce these messages at, or newsletters we can utilize, or even putting things on their payslip? So having the payslip and then signposting to the Money and Pension Service debt advice locator, or the any of their sort of pension-wise appointment advisors. So things like that, just offering those opportunities. Again, we want to make sure line managers and champions feel confident in having conversations with staff. And then whatever you decide to go with, make sure that we're monitoring and evaluating it. So only about 1 in 6 organizations in the CIPD survey found that they actually evaluated the impact of an initiative that they did. So we want to make sure we're getting good practice in. So depending on what you choose, it may be looking at the utilization rate of that initiative. It may be looking at satisfaction feedback from staff. If you have sort of an intranet where you're embedding financial information on it, it may be looking at the number of clicks or downloads, or it may just at least at minimum checking in and making sure that you're still offering a competitive pay. But make sure that we're diarizing ways to check in, review any resources, make sure hyperlinks are still working, because we want to make sure that staff feel engaged. And the worst thing you can do is you click on it and then it says error. So just making sure we have those moments to check in is really important. And then sharing best practice and milestones. So this is really where I would encourage you, if you're happy to share any sorts of things that your business does, in the chat right now, it would be great to sort of share best practice as we go along. The last sort of thing, and then before I pass it over to Emma, is just I'm appreciative that we're all at different stages today here of maybe some certain initiatives that you may be running, or certain sort of levels at which you're planning on doing. So just sort of the common kind of troubleshooting that we tend to see and that we try to support staff or organizations with in the program is either maybe you have low uptake in your benefits offer, and that sort of it makes a weaker business case to say why we should be offering more, investing more into financial well-being. So it's either the benefits that you have aren't relevant to the needs of your staff, or your staff aren't made aware of these sort of amazing benefits that you have in effective ways to them. So looking at both sides of the coin there and thinking about how you can either brand your benefits package. So not every employee is going to go through every single benefit that an organization offers to them. But if they maybe start with their staff induction, they've signed up for their discount scheme, and there's a little logo that explains that this is part of a wider, brand, benefit brand or well-being brand. But then later on in their employee journey, they actually use, the eye care voucher scheme or pension service scheme. But it helps them connect the dots that this is actually part of a wider package to them and more likely to engage. Looking at capacity. So capacity is always really tough when we're trying to think about, how much is on our plates. So definitely try to divvy up the workload, get support from relevant people to help share that load, but also because it will help increase engagement. We've got more people involved, the more likely they're bought into this ideal. And then if you have sort of a lack of financial resource to invest in initiatives, some of the ones that we've talked about, hopefully you can see, don't always require a financial commitment to implement. So starting small, identifying your quick wins, what are the things that are sort of a low time sink or a low cost commitment that would have a maximum impact to your staff. You may, if financial resources are really limited, you may want to do a bit of a prioritization to think about, do I want this to be open to everyone and do a wider approach, or do I really want to target it to those that need it the most, like my lowest earners in the workforce? So just some food for thought there. And as always, if you do want any support with any of the initiatives that you're doing, you can access us, if you join the program. We're always happy to help. And if you've got any questions, I'll sort of have a look in the chat as I pass it over to Emma now.
Hi, thanks, Catherine. So I wanted to talk to you about what financial services can offer through the workplace. You have two kind of options, really. Credit unions like ourselves, which are not for profit. We're a membership organisation, so if you're running a workplace savings scheme with us, your staff become members. They can engage, they have a say in how the credit union is run, so then they can actually engage in their financial service in a different way. The other option is there's fintech providers that are out there and for-profit organisations. There's things like WageStream, Salary Finance, Salad Money. They're options. So what I would suggest anyone does is look at who is out there, compare the credit unions to the other providers, and think about your company and what your business ethos is. With a credit union like ourselves, we're a local community one. The credit unions are generally community, faith-based or industry-based. We're a community credit union, and it's local money staying locally. So if that's something that aligns with your kind of policy with using local suppliers and wanting to stay within the local economy, then that might mean that the credit union is the right supplier for you. Can I move that on? No. Yes. So credit unions have actually been around for a long time in the UK. They first started in the 60s. There are credit unions all over the UK offering payroll deduction schemes. And as you can see from there, there's over 200,000 people using them. The employee satisfaction rates of credit union schemes is actually really high. They recommend it to their co-workers. They like the way it works because it's simple. And with this particular survey, over half of workers in workplaces that didn't have schemes said they would be interested. So there's a genuine interest from workers, and those that do use it really like it. So there's nothing, better than that. It's definitely the kind of thing that your employees will think, this is great and we're glad that you offered it to us. So the way payroll schemes work, there's two sides basically. There's savings and there's loans. So if we start with the savings, a conversation I have often when I go out to workplaces, people say, oh, I keep meaning to start saving and I never get round to it. The beauty of these is they save the day they get paid, rather than trying to make it through the month and whatever you've got at the end of it you save, which, let's face it, for a lot of people it's nothing. By doing it this way, it's taken the day they're paid and put into their credit union account. They can access it. With us, you get your money same day. But by doing it that way, they're more likely to save and build their savings and actually create a financial buffer, which massively helps mental well-being, because they know that they have the financial backstop if the car breaks down, they've got to get new tyres, the boiler needs something doing to it. Those kind of crisis points that can happen in people's lives, if they've been managing to save into a credit union account, that's the place that they tend to have that kind of money for. It's very easy to set up the scheme. It's very basic in how it works, which is the joy of it, really. With credit unions, your staff member becomes a member of the credit union. They complete a payroll deduction mandate saying how much they want to save every month. That goes to your payroll team. They collect all that money together from the employees, send it as one payment to the credit union, who then divvies it up into their accounts. It's very simple. There's lots of benefits of being able to save with the credit union. There's different savings accounts. We have Prize Saver, which is a product that was designed by the Treasury There's currently 16 credit unions that offer it across the UK. And the idea with Prize Saver is that you're encouraging people that never save to maybe just save a tenner a month into their Prize Saver account, because they might win £5,000 in the monthly draw. There's also 10 prizes of £50 and 10 prizes of £20. That kind of incentive, instead of put it into Prize Saver, they're not going to lose it, but they might win. And that actually, I found with Payroll, is a real attractive savings product to people that never save normally. They think, yeah, actually, you know, I could go a tenner a month and see if that would build up some savings and possibly win something. We also have Wave Save, which is an online account which allows people to set savings goals. So you could have cars, holidays, I know, school uniform, whatever, and you can set yourself targets and when you want to save by. So that helps people manage their money, and that's all in their app or online banking system, so they can see how they're doing with their targets and where they're getting to them. So people can decide how they want to save with the credit union. Do they just want to put it into a simple savings account, or do they want to use something like Prize Saver or Wave Save? So there are options there, and it's exactly the same process for the employer for sending the money to the credit union. So with loans, it's the same process for the employer. They get sent a payroll deduction mandate to keep the confidentiality for the employee. We don't tell an employer if it's a savings or a loan payment. That's entirely between us and the individual. And another question I get about loans quite often is there any comeback on the employer if an employee has a loan with us? The answer is no. The credit agreement is entirely between us and the individual. So if they were to leave your employment, we then will speak to that member and work out how they're going to start paying us by direct debit or whatever once they've moved to another job. It's a benefit for members to repay their loans this way, because for us as a lender, the risk is significantly less because we're getting repayment at source, and as a result we reflect that in lower interest rates that are charged on the loans to people that are paying through payroll. So your staff will be able to benefit from more affordable lending. This is particularly helpful for low paid workers who perhaps couldn't access credit from high street banks or from credit cards, that kind of thing. The credit card rate would be very high. So by being able to repay a loan, particularly if it was something under £1,000, because banks, that's an overdraft. So they can't access a loan that's under £1,000. So by being able to access a credit union loan and repay it through their wages, they can get affordable credit rather than going to a payday lender where they may be paying hundreds of % in interest. With us, because the risk is much lower, we're approving over 54% of loan applications through payroll. That's a really high approval rate in the lending world. And we want to support people that are workers with our employer partners. So having people come to us that way, it's great. It's a big tick in the box, and they're more likely to get lent too. And the other thing about our loans is that with our lending, we always have a savings element to repayments to encourage borrowers to start being savers. So say, for argument's sake, you were paying £100 a month, you put £75 on your loan, £25 goes into your savings account, and those savings are kept as collateral against the loan. Once there's parity between the balances, you could use your savings just to pay off the loan with no penalties or early repayment fees. Alternatively, a lot of people just keep on going and then they've got their savings pot at the end, often for the first time. I had someone that was repaying through payroll, and they got so used to the amount that they were repaying for their loan and their savings that they just kept doing it. So when the loan was finished, that whole same amount was now going into their savings, and they were saving a lot of money very quickly by doing it that way.
Is the Wave allow access for those who are retired, or are those that are retired able to access the Wave now, or is it just within the payroll scheme?
No, so people can become members of the credit union whatever age. We welcome everybody. The access to the payroll scheme is entirely reliant on the employer engaging with us, but we do have lots of members. Our average member age is 42, I think. So we do have a lot of members that are retired, and we will lend to people that are retired as well, not just savers, but that's done under the Wave Community Bank banner rather than Chorus, which is the workplace savings scheme. But yes, we also have children's accounts. So anyone of any age, the point of a credit union is financial inclusion. Anyone can join us, and once you're a member for life, unless you decide to close your account, obviously. So with our payroll scheme, we do a lot of added value. We have a lot of online resources, including things like the Money Helper content, which Catherine referred to from the Money and Pension Service. We also do blog articles, things we've been sharing lots of content on the cost of living crisis. We've now got a Surviving the Cost of Living Crisis page where we've linked all our content, so we can be quite agile and respond to what's going on for your workers and what their needs are. We've been running webinars on tackling debt, improving credit scores, surviving cost of living crisis, good versus bad debt. What are those things? And we've had people that work for our employers come to us and say, look, we'd really like you to do something on this. And we're like, yeah, great, no problem. So we were quite happy to get feedback from people and to do the kind of responsive webinars that they want. And as Catherine was saying, if you're asking your employees what they want, then if you came to us and said, look, everyone's really worried about their credit scores at the moment, for example, then we'd say, OK, that's fine. We can do some education on that. So we're here to support our employers and to get the right financial wellbeing education put out there to their staff. We do site visits. I spent last week 2 days in the hospitals in Brighton and Haywards Heath talking to their estates and facility staff, getting them to sign up. So we'll come out, we'll meet staff, we'll tell them about the credit union, what we can do. So all that stuff is part of the package. It doesn't cost the employer anything. It's us wanting to come out and engage with your staff. We'll also attend if you have an annual staff conference or something like that, or you've got an event going on, just let us know and we'll turn up. And there's also benefits to being in the credit union. We have an app called Quo Money, which our members can access for free, which would normally be £40 a year, which is a behavioural money app, which it's really, really clever. You link it to open banking and it will say to you, if you carry on spending like this in 10 days time, you'll be overdrawn. And the idea is it changes people's behaviour. And the guy that invented it wanted to help credit unions turn people that were kind of borderline declines on lending, if they changed their behaviour over a couple of months and they came back asking for a loan, so said, look, you know, I've used this app and this is where I'm at now, they're more likely to access credit from us. So we also do a lot of community involvement, which I touched on before. Those pictures are from when we did a series of Pride events with Glenda the Lender, who was a loan shark, dressing up outfits, tell people about loan sharks, warn them about using them. We also do lots of work doing things like helping homeless people get bank accounts. We work in partnership with charities for 0% interest schemes to people, getting them into housing, things like that, loan schemes to get them into housing. So if you want to work with a business that's offering financial services to your staff and you think that your staff would be interested in becoming part of something like a credit union that offers that kind of service within the local community and is added value to the community, then that's why I think you should be looking at a credit union as a financial service provider. So just a little bit about our workplace savings scheme. It's called Chorus. We currently have employers from NHS trusts and local authorities. We've got Brighton and Hove buses. We've also got charities. We've got Age Concern in Eastbourne. We've got Brighton Housing Trust. We've also got the East Sussex Fire Service. So there's all sorts of businesses, all sorts of sizes. We've got a brick making company that are with us that want to work and offer our services to their teams. It's free to an employer to engage with us. The only cost is your payroll team's time and to run the payments, and HR team's time engaging with us and helping to promote the scheme out to your staff. It's easy to join and set up savings and apply online for loans. There's a one-off membership fee of £5 when you join the credit union. That's it. Once you've joined, it's that. and then you need £1 in your account to keep it open. So my details are at the end, so if anyone would like to have a chat with me about offering it to their staff, please do. And just to give you an idea of the impact that this scheme can have on somebody's finances, this is an example of a lady called Gemma who works for a local authority in East Sussex. She reduced her repayments on her debt from £450 a month to £144 on the loan and £30 on her savings. As I said before, there's a savings element. So across the two, it was £174 a month. So that's a significant saving to her, for her to then have a lot more disposable cash. And also she's building her savings, and from her testimony, she's not touching her savings with the intention of having £1,200 in her savings pot at the end of the loan. That's an absolute perfect example of how we can really make a difference in helping people change their cash flow and improve their financial circumstances. So back to Catherine.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. We did have a question in the chat about a question for you. So as we switch over, I'll kind of leave you to answer that question in the chat there. But yeah, so we, like I said, so we as the Healthy Workplaces program support organizations with their well-being needs, which can include financial. We found it really difficult to try to narrow it down because we have so many great businesses that do so many great initiatives. So this is sort of a nice sort of sampling of things that organizations that we support in our program have done and currently do. So just a few to make one, lots of people can add sort of staff discount schemes. Some other ones that have come through is for MTS, who have a lot of drivers on the road, to stop them from kind of going into pricier sort of catering on site facilities off motorways and things. They equipped their vans to have water coolers and facilities to both store their food and to heat it through. So that was one way they've kind of supported their healthy eating initiatives as well as financially. We have a small business, Caritas, that have just 10 employees, and they reimburse the blue light card for staff and provide funding towards staff discounts. And then we have a range of different businesses here that do some of the payroll deducted schemes. We have KCHFT, who committed to be a living wage employer. They also utilize provider wage stream, so workers can sort of access their salary as they're earning it to avoid payday loans. So there's lots of different ideas there on the table. And then I just want to point you in the final direction. So as we said, there's lots of things to consider. Hopefully it's giving you some really good food for thought from today. But just think about what it is that your staff need, how you can sort of approach it, look at it in a comprehensive way rather than in kind of ad hoc, sort of nice to have sort of moments, and just start small and build gradually. So we'd love to see in the chat if there's any kind of one thing that you feel like you're going to take away from today's seminar. We'd love to kind of see that in the chat now. And then I won't expect you to read all these slides, but just very, very quickly, you will get the copy of the slide deck after today's session, so you can click on all the hyperlinks. If you feel like you want to explore a bit more around kind of best practice, these sort of resources here will really help you with that. Particularly the CIPD financial well-being, their practical guidance lays out all the recommendations, whether you currently do stuff or starting from scratch. And then the ACAS helpline, if you do feel like you need a bit of support around changing contracts to allow people to take second jobs. The Talk Money Week, we would highly recommend anyone complete. It's completely free national awareness campaign, and that toolkit, that's hyperlinked there, will give you all the resources you could possibly need to promote it to staff, alongside our employee wellbeing webinar that we're running, an intro to financial wellbeing webinar during that week for staff participating in our Healthy Workplaces program. If you want a bit more around kind of services that can support you, so the Money and Pensions service offers a ton of free things for businesses. You can get their electronic resources embedded on your intranet, and you can even get a special link where you can track how many people have clicked your link. You can get physical copies if you have more of a routine manual workforce, and they have a partnership team where they have coordinators that can support you. The Money Guiders is their training program, so if you're more local authorities, charities, social workers that support people, then you can go on this free training to help give good advice to people you're supporting. As we said, we have the credit unions as well, so we've got Wave Community Bank's details as well as the other ones in Kent and Medway. And then if you just wanted to leave here today to know what can I promote to my staff during the next few months, then this is the slide for you. So again, Money and Pension Service have a ton of free things. Their main Money Helper website has budget planners, debt prioritizer tools, savings calculators, but they also have a quick start guide that goes through a really good flow of how people can maximize their money. Through Money and Pension Advice Service, you can get their free debt advice locator. So that kind of collates providers like Step Change, Citizens Advice, what have you, into one free website where you can check it out, as well as the Pension Advice Service. And then these are some of the wider sort of well-being related resources that may be helpful to them. So I'll leave it here on the slide as we get to our final minute here. If you can take our survey, we'd really value any feedback as we try to shape what we can offer in the future for you. And if you want to get in contact with the Healthy Workplaces program, our email's there, as well as Emma's as well. So we really hope you've enjoyed today's session. And then I'll stop the recording and take any questions that you may have